Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I am, of course, your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good Friday. In this episode of the Music Den, I'm going to be doing another installment of Live Album Spotlight. Now, this is on a band that had their final show, in quotes, final show on December the 2nd at Madison Square Garden. The band is Kiss, and the album is Alive. Now, unless you've been living in a cave for X amount of years, people pretty much know who Kiss are. Formed in New York City out of the ashes of a band called Wicked Lester, featuring Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, and a guy named Steve Carnell. Wicked Lester were basically a band that did a mixture of styles of music. They signed a deal with Epic Records, actually recording an album, but Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons were not happy with the direction of the album. Musically, it was all over the place, according to them. So they wanted to break up the band and go off and do something that was more heavier, more in your face, hard rock style, more demonstrative in the presentation, more theatrics. So they broke up the band. With Steve Carnell's blessing, they went off and did their own thing. They recruited a guy by the name of Peter Criscola on drums, and eventually recruited another guy by the name of Paul Frehley on lead guitar. They quickly changed his name to Ace Frehley. Peter Criscola became Peter Criss, and the rest, they say, is history. You have the classic, some people would say, the classic lineup of Kiss. They were signed, with Bill Aucoin as management, and they quickly signed a deal with Casablanca Records. 2 weeks after meeting Bill Aucoin, the deal was that if he couldn't get them a deal after 2 weeks, they would part ways. No harm, no foul. They signed a deal with Casablanca Records, funded by Neil Bogart, released 3 albums, self-titled Harder Than Hell and Dressed to Kill, between 74 and early 75. The albums did not sell well overall, marginally, according to Paul Stanley. They sold well, between 50 to 60,000 copies, but not enough to keep the band of their magnitude in terms of the road stage show on the road. So Casablanca facing financial ruin, the band facing financial ruin. Neil Bogart came up with the idea to do a live album, just do a live set on tape of their concert and just put it out and see what happens. Bill Aucoin had to finance the tour, that was the Dress to Kill tour, because they could not, Neil Bogart could not finance it. He was that broke. So they set about setting up dates and used 4 dates to record the material. Those dates started on May 16th, 75, and ended July 23rd, 75. One of those dates was, the venue was the Cobo Hall in Detroit, which was a big venue for Kiss in the 70s. So the set, consisting of 16 tracks, roughly, between whatever you read in terms of online about how long it was, you're looking at around a 75-minute set on a 2-album set. And at the time, live albums were rare, and they were considered dead albums because nobody bought live albums, although they were cheaper to make than studio albums. It was produced by Eddie Kramer, who actually produced their demo for them. Eddie Kramer, worked with Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and also would go on to work with Triumph in the 80s. The album, upon release, it was, sorry, I should say, it was released September the 10th, 1975. And this thing took off when it was released. In the charts, it reached number 3 in Canada and number 9 in the US, spending the total record of 110 weeks on the Billboard chart, which is phenomenal if you think about it. When I first heard this album, I was 7 years old. My neighbor Eddie, I've mentioned Eddie Guerra before, had this album and kept telling me about it. So I wanted to hear it. I badgered him to give me a copy of it, his copy, I should say. He had the original blue label, Bogart label, I should say, pressing of it. So it was an original first run pressing. And I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening on the record, because you have the bombs going off and just a huge sound, bombastic sound. But as I got older, I got into it a lot more, and I've come to realize that this is, if not the quintessential live album, it is one of the quintessential live albums. I did a video way back, listen to me, in April, when I started the channel, on my top 5 live albums. And I think this was number 2, number 1 being Queen Live Killers. You do feel like you're immersed in the audience, like you are at the show, like you're surrounded by fans who, like you, love the music. It is large, it is bombastic, it is just massive sounding. It starts off with Deuce, and it starts off with the announcement, the hottest band. You wanted the best, you got the best, the hottest band in the land, Kiss. And then the guitars come in for Deuce, and the explosions happen on stage, and you literally feel like you're at the venue, you're inside the hall of wherever they're playing. And Gene Simmons just does a fantastic vocal performance on Deuce. Then it goes into Strutter, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons composition. Then up next, you've got to Choose, the lead up single from Harder Than Hell. Fantastic. You can hear Simmons on background vocals at the end of the chorus. Is just amazing. Then Harder Than Hell comes. Fantastic. And then that segues into Firehouse. And then you hear the sirens of the fire trucks going off, and you can just imagine the lights, the spinning lights that are on top of the fire trucks that are going off in the venue, and it's just amazing. Side 2 starts off with Nothing to Lose, which was Kiss's first single from their debut album. And Peter Criss comes in on the choruses, as I like to call, in response to Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. And it's just, he puts a lot of soul into the vocals, Shake It for Catman, whatever. Like, just amazing. Up next is Come On and Love Me. Another Stanley composition. I gotta say too, a majority of the tracks on this album, on the live album, are written by Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. Ace Frehley comes in now and again with some tracks. Come On and Love Me Again, another fantastic track. Again, these are songs like Come On and Love Me, I do believe was released as a single, as was Nothing to Lose, but they really didn't do much when they were first released. Up next, track 3 on side 2 is an Ace Frehley composition, the massive monster Parasite. When that rhythm guitar comes in on the lead, holy shit, it is huge, at least to me. And the band come in like on the drums and the bass, and it's just, the bass is heavy, it is menacing. And then Simmons comes in on the lead vocals. Simmons would sing Ace Frehley's compositions in the beginning because Ace Frehley felt that he didn't have a good singing voice, but they encouraged him more and more to sing as the years went on. Parasite, to me, should have been a single, and it should have been released also as a live single from this album. The live single from this album was Rock and Roll All Night, which is fine. It's fine. But Parasite, to me, should have been a single. It is fan-bloody-tastic. Up next is She, which was a song written during the Wicked Lester days, co-written by Stephen Cornell, with Gene Simmons. Just heavy, brooding bass on it, just amazing. And it has different sections to it, right? So it goes off into different time signatures and different areas, and then it comes back. Just beautiful, heavy, aggressive, brooding, balls to the wall rock. It's just fantastic. Side 3 has 3 tracks, starting off with Watching You from Simmons, from Harder Than Hell. And I've always loved this song. It is heavy, it is rhythmic, it is aggressive, especially Gene Simmons on the vocal. He does a high end, almost like, high octave vocal on it that no one can do except him at the time. And it was just fantastic. Up next is a track from the debut album, self-titled, called 100,000 Years, which, depending on the where you read, it clocks in anywhere from 11 minutes 53 seconds to 12 minutes and 12 seconds. And it's a Simmons Stanley composition featuring a lengthy drum solo, a fantastic drum solo from Peter Criss. When the drum solo kicks in, the band goes off and just freshens up, let's say, right? I'll use that excuse. There was a story that Paul Stanley said that when they were putting the album together, there was a decision or a thought to edit out the drum solo. And Peter Criss said, if you take out the drum solo, I'm leaving the band, because it's a good drum solo. I want it in there. So there were already tensions in the band at that point, right? For each band to be able to contribute. Fantastic. After that is Black Diamond, again another Stanley composition. Stanley's on the intro, and then Peter Criss does the rest of the vocals throughout the song, and it is, again, just a fantastic, heavy, bombastic track. At this point, at the end of the track, the drum risers going up, the flamethrowers are going off, and flamethrowers are going off, like I said, and the fireworks, and it's just this is how they end their set list. And then they say their good night, and then they come back on side 4 with Rock Bottom, with an intro, a guitar intro by Ace Frehley, and then Paul Stanley also does his part, does the vocals. Just an amazing track, heavy track. Cold Gin comes next with Simmons on lead vocals, another Ace Frehley track. And I've always loved that song too. It's great. It's, again, bombastic. It's huge. The crowd is really into it. The band is really into it. Up next, after Cold Gin, is Rock and Roll All Night. Now, this was a single from the Dressed to Kill album. Again, it didn't do well when it was released. This was when Neil Bogart said to the band, Paul and Gene, you need a song that just tells the audience and tells your fans who you are as a band. So they came up with this song. What do we like to do? We like to rock and roll all night and party every day. So they basically, it was 2 songs that they Simmons and Stanley decided to put together. This version of it contains a guitar solo from Ace Frehley. Amazing, amazing. And this is this version of the song that is really heard on radio today, right? And it is huge, it is bombastic, it is loud, it's in your face, it is fucking rock and roll, you know. The last track on the album is Let Me Go Rock and Roll. Beautiful version live. The version on Harder Than Hell is basically a bad version of it. The sound is muddied. It doesn't sound clean. It sounds very low grade, like a B level demo on the on the studio version. But yeah, and that is the album, 16 tracks. There's been overall criticism over the fact that for years the band have denied the fact that they had to go in the studio and overdub stuff. In his biography, Gene Simmons did admit, yes, they had to touch it up, and there was a show called Ultimate Albums, and this was featured. This was in 2003, and yes, the band did admit that they had to go in and touch up vocals, guitar solos, certain sections, because on the night of recording, the band were giving a high energy show, and they were running around, tipping over mics, not singing directly into the mics, so they couldn't catch what they were saying or basically playing. So they had to go in and touch it up. And they also, Eddie Kramer also added extra audience effect, like extra audience response, to give it more of a fuller, rich sound from the audience perspective. So, I mean, and they've gotten criticism for it because it's not considered an authentic live album. I mean, other albums have been given the same criticism. When Queen Live Killers was released in '79, in June of '79, Roger Taylor from the band said that he did not like the album, that the only live things, live instruments on that album, or the only thing live on Live Killers, were the bass and the drums. Okay. So, but other musicians like Ted Nugent said that it's perfectly acceptable that a band would want to go in and touch up certain things and make it sound, better than what it was. But that's up to you guys. You can, everyone has their own opinion. There are certain bands that can play live and very minor stuff needs to be touched up. There are bands like Kiss that have to go back in and recreate what they feel is a good, proper sound. So that's it for now. Please let me know in the comments what you think of this album down below. Whether you like Kiss, whether you not like Kiss, you like Alive, do you not like Alive? For me, I think Alive is a fantastic album. I think that it's one of those albums that it has gone down in history. They released Alive 2 a couple of years later, because they were on this cycle of doing 3 albums and then doing a live album, doing 3, Alive 2 was not a full live album. Side 4 were studio tracks because they didn't have enough live material, and the band did not want to release older, stuff that was already available on Alive, the original Alive, and then put it on Alive 2. So side 4 was studio material. So for me, Alive trumps Alive 2 by a landslide. So that's my opinion, though. Please put yours down there in the comments below. Coming up on the channel, I'm doing a show later today with Mr. Bill Schuster, and we're doing a new music discovery, but it's Bill's new music discovery, and we are, as I've said before, we're flipping the script, and I've given him the Tea Party to listen to, so he's going to give me his views on the first two albums of the Tea Party. So that's going to be interesting. And we are slowly preparing for our Black Sabbath album ranking, which will feature Bill Schuster, his son Neil Schuster, Ryan Gavalier, and myself. So if you thought that the Pink Floyd album ranking was long, this is going to be mammoth. 19 albums to rank. So please look, I'm looking forward to that. And please stay tuned for that. That's it for now. Please look after yourselves and one another. I am Armando Venditti signing off, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye for now.